This is the Flow Flex Scale Podcast, your field guide to the solopreneur operating system with author and coach Jennifer Britton. Daily steps plus consistent action equals momentum. That's Jennifer's mantra, and it starts right here, right now, with you. Let's get started.
What if the biggest thing holding your business back wasn't your marketing, wasn't your visibility, wasn't even your pricing or your offers, but actually was about you? Hi, I'm Jennifer Britton, and I'm the host here at the Flow Flex Skill podcast. Over the last 2 decades plus, I've been able to coach a wide variety of business owners. And for those of us that are solopreneurs, as much as we like to say in business, the founder wants to disconnect themselves from their business. As a solopreneur, you are your business. FlowFlex Scale has been crafted, perhaps even sort of chiseled out of a very rough river, which sometimes is rough, sometimes is smooth, but really it is honed through the course of you. You, your partners, your AI-enabled partners even. And today's episode is going to look at what I believe is really one of the most important defining factors for solopreneurs today: exploring your business DNA. I first introduced this concept back in 2018 in Coaching Business Builder and Plan, Do, Track. So you may be familiar with this languaging of your business DNA. In today's episode, we're going to dive right into it. And if this is the first time you're joining us at the Flow Flex Skill podcast, welcome. Over the last month of our first 4 episodes, we've laid the foundation of what I call the Flow Flex Skill framework. That framework has evolved out of more than 2 decades of work as a coach, as an advisor, as a consultant on small business, micro enterprise, and solopreneurial business support. In episode 1, I introduced the whole framework of Flow Flex Scale, which is a book. You can read about it. Episodes 2 and 4, we met Valerie, and we heard from her and her story of being a new solopreneur in the last year. We explored the realities of building a business right now in the AI-enabled landscape. We explored what it's like to leave corporate and go to your own business. We talked about identity shifts and the opportunities and challenges that not only a new business, but a new AI world business encounters. In episode 3, I came back and talked a little bit about the whole operating system, the solopreneurial operating system of Flow Flex Scale, and why it matters in a world of ongoing change. For many of us, and this also includes me, on some days, we can feel overwhelmed. We can be pulled in multiple directions. And we can also feel like we're constantly chasing the next arc. Well, when we look at today's topic of business DNA, that focus actually takes out some of the frenetic energy that is natural for any solopreneurial business. So I really look forward to today's episode. We're going to be exploring the first of the 9 catalysts that make up this solopreneurial operating system. So we're just going to take a light touch at this. Again, I'm keeping episodes to less than 15 minutes. So I am going to make sure that we get through some, but this is where you're going to want to pick up the book. The book is going to be out in August of 2026, and I'd invite you to pick up a copy at Amazon. So business DNA. What is business DNA? That is what makes us unique. Back in 2020, I launched a series of 5-day challenges called the Stand Out Virtually Challenges. Because think about it, and you probably experienced it. All of a sudden, everyone was online. Every business was online. And so how do you differentiate? Well, one way to do that is you stand out. And you stand out how? Multiple ways, not only through your brands and your offerings, your pricing and your partners, but that probably reflects you or the business DNA. Now, again, as a solopreneur, as a one-person show, our businesses are more likely to reflect who we are. For example, when I left my corporate role more than 20 years ago, some of you heard my story, right? I lost vision in one eye. I was unable to do the work that I was doing in those days. And It really meant that as I sat down to think about my next pathway, I'm glad on reflection that I looked back and really took stock of what made me unique. How could I come to Canada, a country I hadn't lived in for more than 15 years, and open the doors on day 7 in my journey back to say, okay, I'm here. I'm going to now generate revenue, which really became generating revenue for my entire family as a primary breadwinner, even now. What has worked and what has, I believe, been a big factor to be part of the sustainable business model has been building a business that matches strengths. And as we've met Matt, Valerie, you're going to meet other guests. One of the questions that I'm going to be asking them is really about this piece around their strengths and how their business reflects their unique talents. Another component of the business DNA is also looking at things like our values. How do our values shape what we're doing, how we're doing, what choices we're making, what we're prioritizing, where we're putting attention? I think I better qualify some of this because, you can build a business that is not aligned for a few years, for some time. And maybe that's your vision. For those who want to have a business that is perhaps not only their business, but their life, maybe it is the vehicle for contribution, for revenue flow, for creative endeavor, which is really what FlowFlex Skill is built upon. To have a business that can grow with you and evolve with you and evolve in an evolving workspace, I do believe that the business DNA, your DNA, is critical in imprinting your business. So when I say it's critical that we get clear on what our DNA is and how that creates opportunity and also how it might create challenge. Again, the challenge of a one-person show is what are the blind spots that are left? If we're only leading from strengths, where else do we need help? So if we are not engaging human partners or human team members, what does your AI need to know? Where do you need your AI to step in? As a business owner at all stages, it's very easy for us to compare ourselves to others. One of the beauties of leading from DNA, leading from your strengths, leading from your values, leading from your lived experience is we no longer have to compete because we're unique. We're different. What I can offer as a group and team coach is going to be very different from what other colleagues can offer. And that's not just a time in the industry, but there are lived experiences for myself and for the work that I've done with clients that are always going to create its own playing field. I want you to think about that because I think there is often a fear, especially in this moment of AI, where everyone looks and sounds very similar, that we want to really just double down on that. Well, in fact, FlowFlex Scale is double down on you. Double down on your unique identity, your unique passions, your unique story. Some might say, but Jen, that's a little Pollyannish, isn't it? Simple? Well, again, if we're building from non alignment or non foundation, what will happen? Think about it. Have any of you built a deck of cards or taken a deck of cards and built a house? How stable was that? Or maybe you've played Jenga, right? Maybe as a kid you played, I don't know, we had something else. They were like little sticks and you could pull them out one at a time. I think that those metaphors have really influenced me and influenced the way I see the world. It's also influenced the way that I work with other businesses, small and very large businesses. Culture is critical. Now, as a small business, we may not be evolving culture, but that's where a DNA can step in. It influences our stand, it influences our priorities. As businesses grow, they evolve culture. And where does culture get stuck? Where is it hard to shift culture in times of change? When there's non alignment with vision, with values, with mission, with mandate. These are things that even as a small business, we want to embody. We want to incorporate because what happens if we don't? Well, that's where we start to chase things. Saw this a lot over the last 6 years, really, as so many businesses came online. And all of a sudden, people heard, "Oh, I gotta do this, I gotta do that," and they burned out. They stopped doing it. They threw in the towel. Many times, the throwing of the towel in might have been just where success was around the corner, but it's really hard to sustain something that is not uniquely ours. Personally, and many of you know how much work I do in the strengths world, especially as a Gallup Strengths certified coach. A lot of my work really is helping people identify where they are naturally talented. I've said it a few times, but I'll say it in this frame. When we are able to lead from our strengths, we can really focus in on what makes us great. We can also find more flow in our work. We know that the most highly productive teams are teams that are able to leverage their strengths. Now, if we don't have a team, we really, again, need to rely on our own strengths. So think about it. A couple of layers here. Number one, AI. AI means we need to stand out, unless you want to sound like everyone else. Even though my first two books, Effective Group Coaching and From One to Many Best Practices for Group and Team Coaching, were fed to the machines to teach, to train the system around group and team coaching, I realized very quickly a few years ago that I needed to continue to differentiate. My work 15 years ago is not my work of today. And while my DNA has remained the same, my values, my vision, those have remained anchors, but the work that I've done has changed. And so we can stand out. We can differentiate. We need to stand out and differentiate. Well, AI can do a lot of great things, create new fancy graphics, maybe pull lots of data, synthesize data, do research, all of these things. It can't replace us. And FlowFlex Scale is not about building a business that is for a year. It's about building a business for a lifetime. And so, really, I hope that today you'll be thinking about what is that form? What is that shape? So, a couple of questions for you to think about. What strengths do you naturally bring? What experiences have shaped your decisions? What values guide your decisions? And what is the work that really gives you energy? One of the things I love about FlowFlex Scale, the book, which we're recording this in mid-July. The book is not out of editing stage, but already I can feel it metaphorically in my hands. And so in it are a couple of things. There's reflection exercises, there's brain tips, there's AI prompts, and there's momentum moves. What you hear on the podcast is not exactly what you're going to read in the book. So I wanted to make sure that they're complementary to each other. One of the things I am recommending, and maybe this might feel a little different for you as a podcast listener, but I would invite you to do some journaling work on this. Earlier today, I delivered a keynote. I like to think of it as an interactive conversation to a large group in an organization, several thousands of people that will watch this in person and on demand. And one of the things I invited was to really get people to think about taking note, whether it's in an app and whether you prefer to do that on paper. The art of journaling is so powerful. And we may think that we know things about ourselves, but we might uncover even more through our writing or reflecting on our writing. We may also learn even more as we get into dialogue with others. That's why one of the driving forces for my work as a group coach, bringing people together so that they can see the uniqueness of themselves as they are in contrast with their peers. So I'd love for you to grab a notebook if you haven't done that yet with listening to FlowFlex Scale. Open a tab on your phone. Hopefully, I think with most phones these days, you can have multiple apps open. Here are some questions. I want you to actually do a bit of a Venn diagram, but perhaps with 6 slices. So in one circle, I want you to think about your strengths. In another circle, I want you to think about your skills. In a third circle, what are your experiences? Going to spotlight this one on experience because what is making businesses stand out in today's AI enabled landscape? It is experiences. I've been an experiential educator for 40 years. I've been an experience designer for the last decade, and really, as a certified experience designer now, I think this is truly a big piece of what is going to create differentiation. So, what have been your experiences? What have been the paths that you have navigated? The hard ones and the easy ones. In your next circle, I want you to write down your values. What are those things that really are a non negotiable for you? One of my non negotiables as a business is that we offer a variety of things. We also are a global organization. My business is not just in one location, we serve people all over the world. That not only reflects my lived experience of working and leading teams within multinational environments, but also it's a belief that conversations are important all over the world. So, what are your passions? And finally, what's your vision? We'll be doing further conversations around vision. I really hope that one of my mentors, Patty Doblovrosky, will say yes to another podcast episode with me. I did one, you can find it years ago, about her work in Draw Your Future over at the Remote Pathways podcast. But our vision hopefully becomes something that is a pull. Now, in times of change and times of complexity, it can be hard. I think we can often censure ourselves to say, that's not my vision. I can't do that. But really, when we have a clear vision that is aligned with who we are and our values, it can really create an amazing pull, even when we get in the eddies or the whirlpool of life and work. So I hope as you go through this exercise, this momentum move, that you are encouraged. And as you look at those areas, I want you to ask yourself these questions. Where is my business aligned with my DNA? And where is it not? Maybe you're offering services you no longer enjoy. Maybe you're spending time creating content that just doesn't sound like you anymore. Maybe you're trying to build a business because someone on social media said that this worked for them. What works for one may not work for all. And one little sage piece of, I'm going to call it advice. It was a piece of advice that a mentor of mine shared, and I'm going to pass it on here. Is really continue to lead from who you are. When we do that, we can get into flow. When we do that, that natural momentum and rhythm evolves. Doesn't mean that we're not going to have challenges. It doesn't mean that everything's going to work, but it does mean that we probably are expending less energy because we're working with how we're naturally wired than against it. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode on DNA. I hope that you'll check out the chapter in the book on this first of 9 catalysts. Again, flow, flex, scale involves 9 different areas. This is just the beginning. And really, though, the DNA, our DNA, and if you want, you could do this through the lens of the business DNA. If you see the two as separate, this sets our foundation. So I'm going to be back with a guest. I'm also going to be back with our second catalyst. We will see in the organic nature of the recording of this podcast where we go next. So stay tuned. And thanks for listening. Please subscribe and also share within your network to those you know would find value. With that, be well, everyone. Take care. See you next time.